Did you know? Much of the technology and organisms of the Halo universe relate to real-life science with varying degrees of real-world functionality and similarity. The titular Halo ring worlds featured throughout the franchise would be extremely complicated structures not only to build, but to position and interact with as they are in the games. In an article on Gamma Sutra, planetary physicist Kevin Grazer examined the Halo constructs. Grazer specifically examined Installation 04, or Alpha Halo, the setting of Halo Combat Evolved, under heavy scrutiny and came to several conclusions. Through a series of calculations, Grazer reasoned that Alpha Halo weighed somewhere around 1,700 million billion kilograms, about 187,000 billion US tons. With this in mind, and considering that some of the materials which comprise the Halo ring are undefined, it would likely take just over the entire mass of the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter to construct a single Halo. On top of that, there were originally 18 Halos, 12 of which were 30,000 kilometers in diameter, 3 times the diameter of the reduced-sized Halos such as Alpha Halo. Due to the Halo's location in orbit around the gas giant named Threshold, a lot of necessary functions and events currently unspecified by the games themselves can be deduced. Threshold is uncharacteristically devoid of moons, possessing only one moon, Basis. Gas giants in our own solar system, such as Jupiter, possess around 67 moons, and Saturn has about 62 moons. Given that Alpha Halo is as massive as it is, it's likely that some of the moons that should exist were used to build the ring. Since Alpha Halo is over 100,000 years old, it's more likely that the Forerunners who built it found a way to clear debris from Threshold's system entirely. Elsewise, the Halo would have likely been destroyed by a major meteoroid impact by the time of the events in the games. In fact, Installation 00, also known as the Ark, possesses an extremely large foundry at its core which was used to build the Halos, as noted by the events at the end of Halo 3. At the center of this foundry are the remnants of a planetoid which had been strip mined by the Forerunners for years to supply raw materials. It's implied that it's not the first planet to be used by the Forerunners in this nature. Alpha Halo has loosely been indicated to be in orbit almost halfway between Threshold and Basis at what's known as a Lagrange point. This proximity to Threshold would result in a massive amount of radiation exposure. To counteract this, it's possible that conductive cables running along the circumference of the Halo could generate just the right amount of a magnetic field to protect the facility without interrupting its electronics. Also, based on Alpha Halo's orbit between Threshold and Basis and its orientation in said orbit, it's likely that the entire surface goes dark at least once per 24 hours. Speaking of time passing, in order to maintain simulated gravity with centrifugal force, Alpha Halo would have to spin with a tangential speed of just over 7 kilometers per second. This speed would have a noticeable effect on projectiles such as those fired from a Scorpion tank or rocket launcher over long distances. This rotation speed also means that any ship attempting to land on the surface of the Halo from inside the ring's airspace would have to match the landing speed of 15,660 miles per hour. Since Halos contain atmosphere, should a landing ship fail to account for this speed, it would come into contact with air friction at supersonic speeds and most likely burn up instantaneously. The Halo rings in question were created for one specific purpose: to eradicate the Flood from within the Milky Way galaxy should they become too great a threat for the Forerunners to handle. The Flood, which began as the revival of an abandoned concept for Marathon 2 Durandal called the Fungal Zombie, possess extremely powerful neural dominance as a parasite, so much so that they're beyond the realm of any parasites currently known to science. However, many of their behaviors and abilities are exhibited in parasites that do exist. As a primer on the Flood, they are parasites in the strictest form of the term. Without a host, they cannot exist, pure forms notwithstanding. The Flood are the remnants of an extremely advanced civilization known as the Precursors, and in the form they've assumed, they seek out all sentient life and assimilate them into their central consciousness via rapid infection and transformation. While we've covered cordyceps in previous Did You Know Gaming episodes, another parasite which alters its host physiology for its own benefit is the Leucochloridium paradoxum, commonly referred to as the green-banded brood sac. According to Andrew Voke, a postdoctoral fellow studying at Queen Mary's University of London, the green-banded broodsack's predisposition as a parasite is to infect a snail, then a bird, and then back to a different snail. Since birds don't traditionally eat snails, the parasite alters the natural behaviors of the snail, forcing it to make its way up into trees, thus making it slightly more convenient for birds to prey on. The parasite grows into a caterpillar-colored broodsack within the snail, which physically alters the snail to look more like a caterpillar, and thus more appealing to birds. The flood also alter the physiology of their host to suit their survival needs, which includes growing giant tentacles and tendrils for greater combat potential. Most notably, however, they are a neural-based infection, so altering the mind of their host is precisely what they do. In many documented cases, they've convinced their hosts to circumvent combat in order to infect densely populated areas, such as when the Gravemind crashes the UNSC in amber clad into High Charity in Halo 2. Since the Flood all belong to one collective consciousness, they grow more intelligent with each lifeform they infect. As a result of this, they begin to shed biomass, which is a collection of the Flood supercells they're composed of. This biomass can eventually form into Graveminds, which are essentially organic supercomputers. This behavior in the Flood seems similar to a hive mind, where each individual organism of an organization works towards the same goal with the same motivation, instructions, and consciousness, but so far unified consciousness across all organisms of a species hasn't been documented. There is such a thing as swarm intelligence, which is present in Earth organisms such as ants, but this is entirely different. Swarm intelligence is more akin to the Covenant Hunter, which is composed of thousands of tiny worm-like organisms called Lekgolo, who behave with simulated sentience exclusively as a group. While unified consciousness doesn't occur in reality, altering the surrounding environment to create more favorable physical conditions for success does. A species of wasp known as Hymenoepimesis argyrophaga infects a specific species of spider and alters its web-building abilities to protect the wasp's own offspring. The spider is forced to create a large web cocoon for the wasp's larvae, which makes the larvae more difficult for predators to get at. In the same way, the Flood creates Graveminds deep within its own territory, surrounded by biomass, which creates a more hazardous environment for predators, such as in the level Cortana towards the end of Halo 3. Objects such as light bridges or virtually any weapon or shield employed by the Forerunner Prometheans seen in Halo 4 and 5 are composed of hard light. Within the Halo universe, hard light has not been fully explained and is only known to combine high-energy light and gas particles. However, scientists in the real world have been making strides to turn light into something physical. In September of 2013, scientists from Harvard University and MIT were able to coax photons into bonding together, a phenomenon previously thought impossible. According to Mikhail Lukin, leader on the project, what we have done is create a special type of medium in which photons interact with each other so strongly that they begin to act as though they have mass and they bind together to form molecules. This type of photonic bound state has been discussed theoretically for quite a while, but until now it hadn't been observed. It's not an inapt analogy to compare this to lightsabers. Theoretically, depending on how the molecules work together, this process could lead to structures composed entirely of what essentially is hard light. On the subject of lightsabers, one of the most iconic and lethal weapons in the Halo universe is the Energy Sword. It's typically used by the Sangheili, who are the Covenant's elites. This sword is so important to the Sangheili that anyone who knows how to wield one in their society can breed with any female they want. While it hasn't been done to the scale or function of Halo's Energy Sword, confining superheated plasma to a specific shape is entirely possible. The sword is a relatively simple device. The hilt houses magnetic generators which force the sword into a curved shape, and a projector that casts the superheated plasma into said shape, along with a battery. Plasma shaping, as it is now, however, requires electromagnets to surround the plasma and thus create the desired shape. One device capable of accomplishing this is a tokamak. Tokamaks create a sustained fusion reaction by manipulating the charged particles inherent in plasma, thus forcing it to move constantly and create what appears to be the shape of a torus, much like an inner tube. So, unfortunately, while plasma can be shaped, it can't be sustainably shaped free of its electromagnetic restraints as of yet, but it can be shaped and launched through the air. Researchers at the University of Missouri devised a way to launch rings of plasma roughly 2 feet in open air. They did this without using electromagnets to sustain its shape, as the launched plasma ring creates its own magnetic field. Granted, plasma weapons in Halo have a range far greater than 2 feet, but it's certainly a start. Halo Reach introduced jetpacks to the franchise for the first time, despite the game taking place first in the chronology and several of the subsequent games lacking jetpacks. Jetpack technology has come a long way since Halo's inception, and we're easily capable of propelling humans of average weight with current technology. However, Spartans wear armor that, when combined with their own weight, brings them up to roughly 1,000 pounds, the weight of around 6 to 8 people. According to Nino Amarina, CEO of jetpack manufacturer Thunderbolt Aerosystems, building a rocket motor which could lift 1,000 pounds is possible, provided the wearers shoulder the weight of the fuel and pack as well, something Master Chief would likely have very little trouble with. Cortana is what's known in the Halo universe as a smart AI. Smart AIs are developed by recreating the neural pathways of an actual human's brain and affixing them to some rather complicated software called a Riemann matrix. This software grants the smart AI something extremely close to human intuition, which they can use to learn from an unlimited breadth of topics. After roughly 7 years of acquiring knowledge and fastening new neural linkages within their processing matrix, the data becomes too dense. Essentially, this either causes something similar to short-circuiting, or the AI will begin severing neural linkages in a self-preserving act referred to as rampancy. This causes the AI to make increasingly poor decisions regarding which neural linkages to sever, which, ironically, eventually leads to their death. While actual artificial intelligence at this level of complexity is far from being created, AIs which have cognitive learning abilities that comprehend and retain information they decide is relevant do exist. An AI which understands the structures which limit its data acquisition can use that knowledge to convince its handlers to expand those limiting structures so long as it's within its instructions and prescribed functionality. The subject of self-preservation in AI is a topic of severe debate, but this process does appear to share some similarity with how smart AI deal with rampancy. Nick Bostrom, professor of philosophy at Oxford University, states in his scientific journal, Ethical Issues in Advanced Artificial Intelligence, even a fettered superintelligence that was running on an isolated computer able to interact with the rest of the world only via a text interface might be able to break out of its confinement by persuading its handlers to release it. Don't forget to subscribe to DidYouKnowGaming for more facts and trivia. If you like this video, give it a like. You can also click the annotation to see more of our Halo videos. My name is Todd from Rated S Games. If you'd like to see an analytical video about Halo, I made one comparing the intro levels of Halo Combat Evolved 2, 3, and 4 over on my channel, so feel free to watch it.